Ed, I do so love when you book guests that share a lot of commonalities with me. Our guest tonight is from the Bronx. He's a Yankee fan. Like myself, he worked for the AP and the New York Daily News, a place that he still calls home to this day. And aside from being a Philadelphia Eagles fan, he really has only one fundamental problem in his life. Another thing that he shares with me. If you watch or listen to this podcast, you likely know what that is. But just in case you forgot, I will remind you when we return from this dated intro that our producer, Randy Cruz, still hasn't updated.
This guy has made it through rounds playing the style that he plays.
He named everyone. It's like this guy named all 5 of my game-winning shots from 2008, 2009.
I played with two of the most exciting players ever to play the game, Allen Iverson and Vince Carter.
That is Edgar Burgos. I am Bobby C. And tonight, instead of just picking on Edgar, I'm also going to pick on Randy, too. This is the Step in the Arena podcast on the Cruise Control Podcast Network in collaboration with Hard to Guard Media. So thank you for being on the other end of this audio podcast on Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, or on the video side of things on YouTube. And of course, live with us here on Twitter tonight for, again, the Step in the Arena podcast. Usually Ed doesn't remember the name of our own podcast, but in case, he messes it up tonight, I'm here to fix and correct all of the mistakes that Ed makes, which leads me to the punchline, because there's always going to be a punchline, Ed, for every single intro to this show. Do you happen to know what the fundamental problem that our guest is likely enduring tonight by having to be on this podcast?
Oh, I probably in the last 3 weeks I've emailed Steph a couple of times, and I text him, and he came on. Look, hey, we got him on.
that would be what the problem is. So yes, the fundamental problem for this young fella right here is a man named Edgar Burgos. So please welcome from the New York Daily News, Stefan Bondy. Steph, how's it going?
Good, man. Thanks, guys. Hey, I wasn't trying to play you out. Come on, man.
No. I know. I was like, I said it 3 weeks ago. I said, I'm gonna get Steph on the show. They're like, where's Steph at? And I was like, he's coming.
Didn't you get my rival Mark Berman on before me?
We have Mark, we had Frank Isola, we had Ian Begley last week.
All right, so you're fine. And yeah. Bob, good homework, man. You got the Bronx and the Philadelphia Eagles in there.
I know a lot about you, my friend. I've had the opportunity to have you on some of our other shows. It's been great to book you for things like WFUV, and it's great to talk to you tonight, even if Ed is a reason for you not to talk to me on this podcast.
I have a question.
Again, usually affiliation with Edgar Burgos is a problem.
I have a question. Why
by association?
Why the Eagles?
All right, so there's 2 reasons. One is when I was playing Pee Wee football, we were the Bronx Eagles. And 2 was I loved Randall Cunningham. I mean, who doesn't love Randall Cunningham, right? Come on. No?
Well, if you're a Giants fan, you probably
know you're a
Giants fan. I'm a Giants fan, so hey.
Same here.
Hey, I hate the Giants.
I agree.
No,
I mean, Ed,
I love Randall Cunningham, and I love those Buddy Ryan defense teams, man.
No, they were fun to watch.
They were fun
to watch. Yeah, definitely
was. I actually know a lot more about you than Ed probably does. I think we could just leave Ed right out of the podcast altogether. Even though he's a good dude. So at least sometimes it just depends the actual venue that he's in. But I'm pretty sure we should almost play like Bondy trivia here on the show. I probably would know a lot more about your career than he does. But like Ed, do you know where Steph went to college?
No, I do not.
Well, I think went to college.
I'm a Terp. Hey, by the way, my senior year we won the national title. How about
Juan Dixon,
Lonnie Baxter, the crew, man. That was a team. And then
that was a good team. One of my best friends went to Maryland. Eric Ted.
Okay. Yeah, one of the best years of my life, man. And now I'm an adult and I hate it. So
Hey, you're having a good year though. You finally you finally watching a good team play in New York City.
Hey, I was telling you before, I've covered between the Brooklyn Nets, the New Jersey Nets, who I covered them for 2 years. Talk about disaster that was. And the New York Knicks. My first year, Derek Fisher was still the coach covering the Knicks. This is the first team that I've covered that's actually overachieved and actually produced these, positive storylines. So it's been great to cover. Now you take the fact that it's COVID and we're not allowed in the locker rooms, and that sucks. So we can't, produce the same kind of stories and relationships that we usually do. But the fact that this team is playing well above expectations has been fun, and it's been great.
Yeah, Steph, I think it's real interesting when you talk about the Knicks that obviously, everything kind of starts at the top. And that's been a problem for the organization now for the better part of probably the last 20 years is that there have been issues with the brass for the organization. But this year coming in, we got some really great guys at the top of this thing. And, there's a good chance that Tibbs is going to be in the conversation for Coach of the Year.
Yeah, I think so. If you look at the roster from last season, it is almost the same roster that they have now. I mean, they added Emmanuel Quickly, they added Alec Burks, they added Nerlens Noel, but those are kind of fringe players. But the core is still the same. Julius Randle, RJ Barrett, they were on the team last year. And that team last year was not good. I mean, we all watched them. So what was the biggest upgrade? It was on the sideline, right? I mean, when you look at personnel and the fact that Tibbs has this team not only in the playoff conversation, but top 5 defensively. I mean, that's his trademark, right? So he came in and established that culture, that mindset of defense first, and it has worked wonders. So we're seeing the results on the court, and I agree with you. He deserves consideration for Coach of the Year. In fact, I just got my ballot yesterday. I have Coach of the Year, and I'm not going to cast my votes now, but if I were to, Tom Thibodeau would be number 1.
What do you think Tibbs has done to change the last couple of years to make, to adapt to today's game?
So coming out of Minnesota, I think the knock on him was coming out of we go back to Chicago. The knock on him was twofold. One is that he burns out players, right? We remember that, right? And number 2 was that he couldn't connect well with today's type of NBA players. That today's NBA player doesn't want the taskmaster, doesn't want the type of guy to, be hard on them. They want freedom, and the problems with Karl Anthony Towns kind of bolstered that argument. But what I've seen here in New York is the opposite. Now he's still playing players a lot of minutes. We see Julius Randle number 1 in the NBA minutes, but he is connected with these players. He's got them all to buy in, and I didn't think that was possible because when we talked about his relationship in Minnesota with Andrew Wiggins and Karl Anthony Towns, it wasn't like that. Here, every player likes the fact that it's structured, that they know their role, and he brought that. And the players understand that, hey, if I don't play defense, I'm not going to play. So I think that helps with winning. And if you get every player to buy in, it works. And that's what Tom Thibodeau has been able to do here.
Before the season, Steph, we were talking Knicks basketball and you're previewing the upcoming year. I don't think there's almost anyone that would have said to you that Julius Randle would have the kind of season that he's had. Even you, I'm pretty sure if I was to ask you at the start, coming into the season, all the COVID mess, you're probably going to identify, in my opinion, you're going to identify 2 players coming into the season, RJ Barrett and Mitchell Robinson. Nowhere in the conversation is Julius Randle, especially after Obi Toppin gets drafted with the first-round pick. How in the world does Julius Randle go from an afterthought for the Knicks coming into the season to a guy that, if he's not the MVP of the league, he's probably the most improved player?
All right, well, he's not MVP. So Nikola Jokic is MVP in my book right now. And he's probably in the top 8, but I still wouldn't even put him in the top 5 right now. But you're right. The fact that he was able to 2 things happened. One is he came into training camp in tremendous shape, and he's able to absorb these minutes that Tibbs is giving him. Not only is Tibbs playing him 38 minutes a game, he's giving him the ball to be the playmaker where he has to exhaust more energy. And then on the other hand, he's still guarding some of the best players. He's still playing very good defense. So the fact that he was able to come in tremendous shape has helped him a lot. The other thing is, out of nowhere, he developed a consistent, almost elite three-point shot. And he never had that before. And when you have that in today's NBA with the spread the floor situation, and we all know how today's NBA game is played, I mean, that just opens everything up for Julius Randle. It opens up his ability to draw defenders, dish to the right person. He's become quite the playmaker. He's finding RJ Barrett in the corner all the time. So it's really both an indication of how hard he's worked and how Tom Thibodeau understands what to do with a player like Julius Randle. I think it's a combination of those two things.
Edgar has no three-point shot, Steph. Just like
No, I don't believe it.
I'm better than Bob. Trust me.
I ain't saying much. I'm a white guy.
So Julius Randle has the Knicks have a tough decision with Julius because he has one more year left on his contract, and they're talking about 4-year extension for $106 million, or if he waits the extra year, it gets to $200 million.
Yep.
What do you think he does?
So it's a no-brainer for the Knicks to try to offer it to him, right? I don't think he's going to take it. We know today's NBA players, they have so much confidence in themselves. They have so much self-belief. They're willing to bet on themselves. And you take a player like Julius Randle, he's going to say, all right, I can make $100 million extra dollars by waiting and showing you that I'm really worth this max contract that's going to come in 2022. I think he's going to bet on himself. And that's the history of the top players in this league. And I think Julius Randle thinks he's one of the top players. So, the Knicks the other option, which is possible, is the Knicks can still offer him a shorter term deal, maybe a 1-year extension to guarantee that money. But if I'm Julius Randle, and I made this leap from last year to this year, I think I can still maintain that. I'm going to say, you know what? I'm going to play it out in free agency in 2022 and get as much money as possible. And he deserves it, right?
Yeah, I for some reason I feel like he's going to take the 100.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair because if you look back at the history of him, this is by far the best he's ever played. We just talked about it. So nothing is guaranteed. But I know his mindset where he thinks he's a superstar. He thinks he's one of the top players in the league. And he thinks he's going to be able to continue that in the future.
So what's the percentage then that this is a career year? Is the chance that this is just like an anomaly is higher than the fact that this could be what we actually think is legitimate? Or, what are we getting? Are we getting real Julius Randle? Like, is this what we're going to see next year or not?
That's a good question because I've changed my opinion about this. In the beginning, I was like, there's no way this dude is going to be able to maintain this. There's no way he's going to shoot over 40% from three-point for the rest of the season. Like, he's going to have to regress back to the mean. But he just keeps doing it. In fact, he's gotten better. I thought that the minutes would have had a big effect on him. I thought he'd hit the wall. And all of a sudden, you see a dip in his production and a dip in his stats. But that hasn't happened. So I've changed my opinion about this. I think Julius Randle is legit. I am worried how he would, like, let's say the Knicks decide to go out and get a number 1 ahead of Julius Randle. I am worried about his role and how he would produce as a number 2 because right now he needs the ball in his hands. So if the Knicks went out and got Bradley Beal or if the Knicks went out and got Dame Lillard, how would Julius Randle be productive as a number 2 without the ball in his hands playing, without the ball? I don't know. I think that's a good question, and the Knicks have to ask themselves that question. But the way he's been playing right now as their number 1, I think it's sustainable.
That might be like what the Knicks saw when they brought in Melo and had Amari. It just changed the whole dynamic of the complexion of their offensive lineup.
Right. All of a sudden, Amari wasn't as valuable, right?
Now I like Julius, but Julius I don't think Julius is a $200 million player. And that whole rumor with Damian Lillard, I'll do whatever it takes to get him here. Not trading RJ. Everyone else is expendable for me.
So you'd rather trade Julius and RJ?
No, I would keep RJ and Julius, but let's bring in Damon and figure out a way we could trade anybody else on that team.
Yeah, well, think about this. Everybody's a $200 million player in the NBA now.
I know, it's crazy.
So Julius is going to be all NBA. He's definitely going to be all NBA, probably third team, maybe second team. That's a $200 million player in today's NBA, man. It's just the way it is. I mean, I'm watching the Nets game right now. Kristaps Porzingis is a $200 million. That weighs 150, and he never plays. So,
yeah, I mean, the Knicks have a point guard problem. Obviously, point guard has to be improved next year. What do you think they do to make to improve the point guard's position?
So they're gonna get a look at this new Argentinian guy who they just signed, Luca Vildoza. That was kind of a signing for the future where they signed him to 4 years, but the 3 years, this year's guaranteed, but the 3 years after that are non-guaranteed. So they're going to get a good look at him at the Olympics and then in Summer League. But, I don't know if he's a long-term answer. The other option is to, like you said, test the trade market. Dame Lillard may be out there. I don't know. I wouldn't count on that. Chris Paul, who knows? I mean, but the one free agent you might be able to look at is Lonzo Ball. Now he's going to be a restricted free agent, so the Pelicans can match. But from my understanding, they're not willing to match up to a certain level. So if the Knicks are willing to give Lonzo Ball $20 million a year, the Pelicans aren't going to match that. Now the question is, do you think Lonzo Ball is the kind of starting point guard that you want to lead this team? I don't know. I mean, he's shooting a lot better. He still plays good defense, but he still has flaws as well.
Yeah, Steph, I don't think Lonzo Ball is going to take you to the NBA Finals. And I think realistically, the Knicks have to gauge whether or not this is a championship caliber team now or whether the window is still I think realistically, right? I know the Anthony Donahues of the world might tell you that the Knicks are ready to win the whole thing now. But I think realistically, I love you, Anthony. I think realistically, this is like a 3-year window. I think if you're a Knicks fan, you are hoping that the true title contention can happen within the next 3 years. And I think they still need to add one more legitimate star, especially if it could come at point guard. And I think if you had to really put, your finger on the pulse, so to speak, of the Dame trade talks, that would probably be a pretty weak pulse. I don't think the Knicks are anywhere near acquiring someone like him from Portland.
Well, I mean, they have enough assets to make a big trade. The problem is Portland is probably not why would Portland trade Dame Lillard right now? I don't think. And then you talk about, Devin Booker's name has been out there just because of his association with Kentucky and his association with Leon Rose. But why would the Phoenix Suns ever trade Devin Booker, or why would the Utah Jazz ever trade Donovan Mitchell? So there's a lot of big names being floated out there. Unfortunately for the Knicks, none of them are available. So you're right. I think the Knicks are in position to pounce in case one of these stars become really available because they have all these draft picks. They got the 2 upcoming from the Dallas Mavericks. They have prospects. I mean, I know you don't want to trade RJ Barrett, but if you could get a real deal superstar, he might be on the table. So they have the assets to actually pull something off. The question is who is going to be available and who is worth that. I mean, would you trade, for instance, would you give up the treasure chest for a guy like Karl Anthony Towns?
I'd
rather see a guard. I think it's a guard-driven league. I'd rather see a guard.
That's fair.
The Knicks.
I would make a deal for Cat, but you got to have some players around Cat. Cat has proven that he can't take a team to the playoffs on his own.
I agree with you. And they have. I mean, you could argue that Julius Randle's better than Cat at this point.
Agreed.
I mean, I agree with you that it has to be at a level above even Cat, where if you're going to exhaust all these assets that you've been accruing for so long, and we saw for years where Scott Perry, Steve Mills says, "Hey, we're in the talent acquisition phase. We're trying to gather as many assets as we can." And part of the reason they're doing that is so that they can be stocked for the draft and they can make these draft picks. But the other reason is in case somebody becomes available, we're going to be in a situation where we can make the deal. And so they're kind of in a waiting pattern where if somebody does become available, they are in a situation to make that deal. And they've been that way for a couple of years now, where they've been stockpiling assets. Part of the problem is they haven't drafted particularly well. RJ Barrett, we mentioned him; he's been a success story, but Kevin Knox, bust. Frank Ntilikina,
bust.
Obi Toppin
too, though.
We don't know about Obi Toppin yet, but it hasn't been good so far. Emmanuel quickly has looked good. Mitchell Robinson was a good draft pick, but overall, if you look at their picks, I think they've bombed more than they've succeeded.
Steph, it's been so bad with Toppin that Edgar calls him Topin.
No.
Podcast. He doesn't even call him by his proper name. He just says Topin.
No, not a Brooklyn guy, not a New York guy.
No, I mean we have an argument every week on this show about Obi. And I was a firm in the beginning of the year when the draft happened last year. I wanted Halliburton.
Okay.
And because I'm a firm believer.
Season, Ed, out for the season.
Yeah, but that's fine. But I'm a firm believer that, and I say this every week, that New York teams should never draft New York players because it rarely ever works out.
Now, do you think that it doesn't work out because of the environment, like they're back home and they're around all their boys and shit happens, or is it because the kind of New York player, it just doesn't work out with the Knicks?
I just think it's from me personally, being in the locker room all those years and the New York guy is here, it's family, it's friends. It's like guys can't concentrate. And like they're trying to concentrate on the game. Their phone is ringing off the hook. People are asking them for tickets left and right. Obviously, that when they leave, when the game is over and they leave the arena, somebody's asking them for something. They could barely concentrate. They're better off going to another team. Less people are going to bother you because you're not in New York.
So name that is J.R. Smith. That's who you talking about?
Nah, well, J.R. had one good year. He had that one. He had that one good year.
Six man of the year.
Yeah, but then what happened?
Yeah, it didn't go well.
You know what? In all seriousness, I don't think that's fair for Obi because he has not been given the opportunity. Maybe he hasn't completely earned the opportunity, but the start of the season, he gets injured. That's the first thing. Second thing is he got off on the wrong foot with Tibbs because he just is not really known for his defense. He's not a defensive player. And then you had the emergence of Randall really, really right from the start of him being an all-star player. When I think that was unexpected. Now, maybe that is Tibbs or maybe it's Randall coming back into camp in a much, much better shape. But at the same time, Obi never got the shot that he needed as a rookie. Most teams that are drafting players like him in the first round are allowing that player to play the whole season.
Now, so two things on that. One is I understand the distraction aspect, but in this COVID season where they're not even allowed to have these people in the locker room or at the arena, I don't think that applies to Obi right now. Now, to your point, Bobby, I think his struggle goes beyond opportunity. Like he seems kind of lost out there. Even when he's playing, when he gets those minutes at the beginning of the second quarter, at the end of the fourth quarter, the reason why Tibbs has such a short leash with him is because he looks like he doesn't understand the offense. He doesn't understand the defense. And, I think that there's an IQ kind of learning curve that he needs to follow. But the athleticism is clearly there. And I think like you said, it's a problem that he's still playing behind Julius Randle because there's not a lot of options there. But if Tibbs really felt, or if the Knicks really felt that Obi Toppin had enough potential that he should be out there more, they would put him at center, or they would put Julius Randle at center and let Obi Toppin play the four. His minutes are limited because he's limited right now. And the fact that he's 23 years old, one of the oldest rookies in the NBA, is probably not a good sign for his development because you could excuse a 19-year-old, right? But, I mean, Obi's 23. Like, he was one of the oldest rookies to come out of the draft. So it was the expectation that he was going to be more NBA ready than he is right now.
100%. Yeah, 100%. I think he's a player that needs a point guard. I'm not surprised that he's played a bit better since the Knicks
With Derrick Rose.
with Derrick Rose. I think as a Knicks fan, and this was a question I did want to ask, speaking of guys that kind of, maybe played themselves out of the rotation or had disappointing seasons. I'm really curious what happened to Austin Rivers as he ended up, out of town. What is the real story with Austin Rivers?
So I'm not sure, but something happened, or at least he hinted that something happened, something bigger than just, you got cut out of the rotation because we acquired Derrick Rose. I asked him last night after he took it personal because after the game, he was like, this was a revenge game for me. I didn't like the way that I was treated there. And I asked him straight up, I said, what bothered you about what happened in New York? And he was beating around the bush. And he said he didn't really want to get into it, but, because he didn't have enough time to get into it, but something bad happened. That's what he said. I don't know what it could be. But I know. I'm in his mind right now.
I think Edgar asked him to be on the Step in the Arena plan.
Is that what happened? It's your fault, bro.
Nah, I honestly, I think, listen, at the end of the day, Austin Rivers, he had some good games, but he also had a lot of flop games. And he was injured. So my thing is like it just didn't work out. That's it. I don't know what
but what I'm saying is he said he was hinting that it was something bigger. Like he was like a lot of stuff happened, and
maybe he got promised
time.
But my thing is like he might have got promised more playing time, but at the end of the day, he didn't play well. So my thing is like, all right, cool. Next man up.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. Actually, I mean, maybe he was just over exaggerating the situation. But if you're Austin Rivers and that was really the problem, you just wasn't getting enough playing time, why would you just say that instead of like, there was a big problem, I just don't want to get into it because I don't have enough time. So he kind of left. If that was a fact and it was nothing more than, hey, they acquired Derrick Rose and I wasn't in the rotation anymore, he left it open to speculation that it might be something more. I will say that. So
I have a question. What would you consider a successful season for the Knicks?
So they've already surpassed. I mean, so we talking right now or before the season?
Now on.
Okay. Now they have to get a playoff berth. Like they're still in danger of being in the play-in tournament because they're only 2 games up of the 7th seeded Miami Heat. So there's theoretically they could still slip into a play-in tournament. That would be bad. I'd say that'd be disappointment. So I say the bar is get into the playoffs and make that first round, whoever it is, competitive. Don't get swept. Make it 6 or 7 games, and I'd say that's a successful situation. If they play the Miami Heat, that's probably big trouble for them because Miami has their number. I think Butler steps up come playoff time. I think the best matchup for them in the first round is the Atlanta Hawks. I think they could take the Atlanta Hawks and then they get to the second round.
If they are the 7th seed, if they play the 7th seed, that 7-10 game, and they lose, is it an epic failure?
Speaking from today, yes. Speaking from beginning of the season, though, because I had them as 25 wins. I thought I didn't even think they'd even get into the play-in tournament, just based on the talent level and what happened last season. But considering they've won, they were in a stretch where they won 12 or 13 games. They were as high as the 4th seed, with 7 games remaining. If they were to slip into the play-in tournament and fall, in that, I'd say it's a disappointment.
Steph, do you buy into the whole idea that, teams peaking at the right time, the wrong time? Because right now, if you were to look at this Knicks team, I think you could say hottest team in the NBA, right? I think that's fair. So they're the hottest.
Well, they just got. So the problem with that is they just got blown out by the Nuggets. I mean, the Nuggets killed them, man. You watch that game?
Yeah, it was bad.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So again, let's say you take this body of work over the last, 15 games, hottest team in the NBA, right? But there's still games to be played here in the regular season. And then, of course, the postseason. And to me, the postseason has always been a different animal. Like, even if Knicks fans, and again, I grew up a Knicks fan, if Knicks fans are confident that they could take down, let's say, the Brooklyn Nets, as Ed maybe suggested, potentially in the playoffs, I think you have to be realistic in the sense that most teams that are built for the postseason don't necessarily give their all during the regular season. Not saying that the Nets are walking through things or the Lakers are doing the same, but I think
you could say the Nets are cakewalking. You could say
I think it might be. I think they might flip that switch when they get to the playoffs and things might change. So I guess what my question is then is, are the Knicks, have they peaked maybe too early, or do you see them in the playoffs still being able to find another gear to potentially get not only past the first round, but maybe really deeper into the postseason?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to say. I think if you take a team like, we're talking about the Nets. If they get James Harden back and Kevin Durant is back at full strength, I don't see a situation where the Knicks can beat them in a series.
I agree.
Whether or not they're peaking or they're, back to what they were early in the season, I don't think it matters. I mean, that team is just stacked. So, I think they, like I said, I think they have a shot against a team like the Atlanta Hawks in the first round. Second round, whether they play the Sixers, whether they play the Bucks or the Nets, that's going to be a tough matchup for the Knicks. No matter how you spin it, because probably the Bucks would be the best matchup of those three. They lost all 3 games this season to the Nets. They lost all three games this season to the Sixers. I think that's just either way. That's just a tough matchup for the Knicks. Peaking or not.
I want to switch over to the Nets, but Bucks. Giannis outplayed Durant for those 2 games this past week. Do the Bucks have a chance of beating the Nets this year if they face each other in the playoffs?
Yeah, I think part of the Nets' problem is, so we talk about their talent, and we don't really know how good they're going to be when all 3 of those guys are together and clicking and playing as well as they can. But part of the problem is they don't have a big man to counter both Embiid or Giannis Antetokounmpo. So that is the big problem. And I watched that game, and I agree with you. I think he's going to be a matchup problem for the Nets, because if they try to stick Blake Griffin on him, I don't think it's going to work. If they try to stick DeAndre Jordan on him, I don't think it's going to work. They have no answer for those 2 players. And you could say, well, you can let the Sixers score 120 points and it doesn't matter because the Nets are going to score 130. That might be the case. They might just outscore them. But it's going to be a struggle against those 2 big men, whether it's Antetokounmpo or Joel Embiid.
If the Nets do not make it to the NBA Finals, how much pressure will they have next season?
Yeah, it's a 2-year window, right? Because those guys, people forget, like, both Durant and Kyrie have contract options for the following season. So they're only really guaranteed under contract next season, and then they could just bounce. So next season is like do or die for them. And I would only compare it to I covered that Nets team with Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce. It was the same situation. Now that team, they had a lot of older players and there wasn't as much talent, but it was like, we need to win right now. And the fact that they didn't meant, people got fired, and that's what happened. You're right. It's a tremendous amount of pressure if they don't succeed and at least make the NBA Finals this season. I think that's the bare minimum for the Brooklyn Nets this year, is make the NBA Finals.
When you take that trio into consideration, among the top, let's say 10 players in the league, when healthy, do you think all 3 of them rank, let's say, in the top 5 or 6? Trying to put into perspective about how great that trio could be when completely healthy. What do you think the ceiling is for those 3 guys when they are healthy?
All right, so I got to think back. So what do you think, Edgar and Bobby? Are they better than LeBron, Wade, and Bosh?
I don't think we've seen their best. I think they could be.
You think so? It's tough. So do you think they're better than Curry, Durant, and Klay Thompson?
No.
Ed, come on, man. Kyrie is, when he's right, man, he's tough.
2 of the greatest shooters of all time.
Yeah. So, the fact Curry is, for me, I love Curry. I think he's one of the greatest players of all time. It's tough for me to put that Brooklyn trio above Golden State. It's tough for me to put them above Miami. And we're not even going back to like the old Boston Celtics with Bird, McHale, and whatever. We're not going back to the Lakers with Worthy, Magic, and Kareem. So, historically, I'm not going to put them in, to say that we barely even seen them. Historically, I'm not going to put them in like the top tier yet.
And also back then, those guys played games. They played every day. These guys. I mean, Kyrie takes days off. I'm just like I've never seen anything like it.
We were talking about Kyrie earlier, and he can do whatever he wants with the media. I don't care about that, but I do have a problem with him early in the season deciding, all right, I'm just gonna bounce and I'm not gonna play, and the team really doesn't know where I am. And I'm not gonna play for like 10 games, and just take it off just because I feel like it. That's not good leadership. That's not sending the right message to the players. So I do have a problem with that.
Steph, speaking of ranking here, because we definitely love to spice up the show because Ed is boring as hell most of the time. So,
damn, you're killing Ed, man.
I kill Ed every week, man. I gotta kill him. Steph, in all honesty, your dad is a legend, legendary sports writer. So,
I appreciate that.
New York Daily News legend. Who is the better Bondy, Pops or you?
Come on, man. My father, of course. I mean, I can't even compare, man. Come on. My father is a legend, like you said, and he taught me everything I needed to know about writing. And he's a nice guy too. I'm an asshole, so.
Would you ever write a book?
I do. I thought about it. The problem is that I sit down and I say, man, first of all, the money's not great and it takes too fucking long. So I don't want to sit there and write like a 400-page book when I could be doing other shit. You know what I mean? So I've thought about it. I just had two things. I don't want to take the time to do it right now because I'm lazy. And the other thing is I haven't really found a topic worthwhile. You got any ideas? Shoot them my way.
Step in the Arena podcast, historical book.
The oral history of the Step in the Arena.
It's crazy because I don't know if you know, but Frank Isola is doing a book with Charles Oakley.
I do know. He's told me about that.
Yeah, so I'm actually looking for it.
If you can get a legend like Charles Oakley, and it's basically like him just talking, and then Frank is giving all his thoughts, almost like a second, third person. I'll do that. But, I got to find a legend like Charles Oakley that wants to hook it up with me. So if you know anybody, let me know.
We'll talk on the side.
All right, fair enough.
Ed's the man with the contact stuff. That's how Is that my turn to ask another question, Ed? I mean, most of the time.
You got it. I'm going to let you go because, I know you get itchy.
I do get itchy. Most of the time I try to jump in over you. That's usually how this plays out. So. Well, Steph, I mean, I think it is interesting to talk about careers with you because, a lot of times when we start talking, even for myself, as someone that started in the newspaper industry, love newspapers, but of course, the dynamic of that has really changed a lot. I think it does help that you work for one of the leading tabloids, of course, in the country when it comes to, being known and for sports. But again, when your dad was in this industry, at its height, it was definitely a lot different than it is today. So much more of the content is driven by the internet and social media, unfortunately. But I guess the question for me would be, as someone that started, we talked a little bit about it in the intro, whether it's the AP or even your days with the Bergen Record or the New Jersey Herald, how much enjoyment has there been to be able to kind of follow in the footsteps of your father at the New York Daily News? And my question would be, why are you still at the New York Daily News?
Well, it was. I'm not gonna lie. It was always it's kind of cheesy, but it was always my dream to cover the Knicks. They were my favorite team. Growing up, I loved Patrick Ewing. I love John Starks. I love that whole squad. Like that they engulfed my whole teenage years, where I was like, man, I would love nothing more than to cover this team full time. So the fact that I got that job, it felt like a dream come true. And, I've had other opportunities, but I'm reluctant to leave it because, like you said, this is the newspaper of my childhood. This is the team of my childhood. I'm having a blast doing it. And it's hard for me to envision something I'd have more fun doing. So you're right. There's been some issues with the newspaper business in terms of sustainability, in terms of profitability. But I have confidence that it'll work out somehow. I think that they've managed to make a lot of money with subscriptions online and advertising online. We still get a bunch of clicks and hits and all that stuff. So, I'm happy with what I'm doing, and I hope I can do it forever. Shit.
I was gonna say you have a great following, social following. How's that helped you as far as like on the social? Did you like doing it in the beginning, and how do you like it now? I mean, because you get a lot of fans. I see sometimes you get a lot of fans that come at you sometimes.
Yeah, it used to be less toxic. Now it's just like it feels like there's just drama always happening and coming my way with social media. I don't like it as much as I used to. It feels more toxic than it ever did, and I think part of that was what happened with me at the Garden when they banned the Daily News from some press conferences, and that had less to do with me than it had to do with the Daily News and the history with the Knicks and the newspaper. But, that kind of pitted me against some of the fans and said, well, I'm toxic for the team. And it didn't help on social media either. So I don't enjoy social media as much as I used to. I still have fun with it. And I think some of the fans kind of take it too personally sometimes, which is a problem. But, I let it roll off. You know what I mean?
I think it's interesting too, because obviously, we kid a lot here on the show, but we love talking basketball, but then also just the whole atmosphere that surrounds the game. So by having so many of these great media personalities be able to join us on the podcast, we're able to talk about, stuff like this. So I think the impact of COVID-19, of course, has been seen throughout the NBA, but very specifically in your actual job. I mean, these one-on-one interviews that you were so used to being able to have, I'm sure these days it's been you making phone calls or sending text messages or emails to, whether it's agents or, right? I mean, I'm sure the dynamic.
That's it. We're totally at the whim of if we want to talk to a player, we can request somebody, but 9 times out of 10, we're not going to get that person. And it just all comes on as one Zoom call where every reporter who decides to log in gets it. So there's no more one-on-ones. And especially before the season started, I kind of had to adapt where I no longer relied on interviews. I no longer relied going on practices. I would just call agents, like you said, executives. And that would be it. Like it totally changed the dynamic. The biggest negative part about it, in my opinion, is you don't feel, as a beat writer, you want to get entrenched with the team. You want to be part of a team, and you kind of want to tell the story to the fans like, hey, this is what's going on. This is what it's like being part of this team almost. We're not part of the team, but we're still there entrenched. We're in a locker room. We're seeing things that normal fans can't see. We don't get that right now. So that's been a problem, I think. That's been a negative aspect to it. But you learn to adapt. You learn to change your whole philosophy, your strategies, and that's kind of been what I've been doing through this. I hope it ends. I hope that, eventually we can go back in the locker room, but who knows, man? I mean, this thing's been going on forever, and the NBA, who knows? They might say, we might go to the European soccer way and not let reporters in the locker room anymore. It's possible. In fact, I heard a rumor that might happen. That would suck.
Yeah, I said the same thing. My last question. I think that they're not going to let guys back in the locker room because the players are like, it's kind of easier for the players now, and for them, they're like, we're still talking to the press after the game via Zoom. And now there's less rumors happening in the locker room that's not on Twitter or, on the gram. There's less talk. And the NBA might be like, hey, let's keep
it's not worth it for us. Yeah. But see, that's another problem. We were talking about social media before, and that's another problem with it, is it ruined, in a lot of ways, it ruined the players' relationship with the media because they all see, now not all the reporters are doing this, but some of them are just putting everything on blast on social media. And that's what the players are seeing, like, immediately, right? And they're like, why would I talk? Why would I put anything out there if it's going to be exaggerated and put on social media and everybody can see it? I I think that's been part of the downfall with the relationship between the players and the media. And it's tough to envision a way where it can get back to the way it used to be, you know?
Steph, I think based on these album covers that are behind you, it looks like you're going the route of maybe Eminem in the future if the whole thing doesn't continue to work out as well.
I was telling you, I don't even know these people. This is seriously my son. By the way, congratulations to my son. He got accepted to UPenn, and he committed there. So shout out to Dominic. But yeah, this is his stuff. I got nothing.
Dominic.
But I do. You know what he does? You know what he does have something around my age bracket. He's got the you see the Nas Illmatic? There you go. Hot album right there.
It's good stuff.
Nice. Nah, Steph, man, we really appreciate you coming on, man, and giving us the time. It's been a long time. I think the last time we talked was like 6 years ago.
Yeah, it's been a while. You're gonna get the game. Don't you host games up at Dykeman or Rutgers?
Nah, I was doing all of that. I'm dealing with the guys from Hoops in the Sun now.
All right. Well, let me know if I can come out to anything, man.
Yeah, you're always welcome. Door is always open. And
all right, well, email me. Let me know. I don't know if you don't email.
I'll shoot you a text. I got you.
All right, bro.
Well, Matt, he's gonna hit you up all the time now.
We're gonna be best friends.
Like a nightmare that comes back after 6 years. That's how it goes.
Be like, you see Edgar and Bondy hanging out together all the time.
Yo, come on, man. Hey, I hang out with it's a pandemic. I don't hang out with nobody. I get used to it.
You and me both.
All right, fellas.
I appreciate it. Take care.
That was great conversation. Hopefully he appreciates our sense of humor, Edgar.
Yo, you know what I forgot to ask you? What's up with that terrible hat you're wearing?
So obviously you don't know your history here, my friend. This comes from maybe my favorite movie of all time. Any ideas where this might come from?
Tuna No Crust, no.
Tuna No Crust.
No.
Only the cult classic, the first Fast and Furious film, Mr. Paul Walker himself. When he walks up to that beautiful young Jordana Brewster and he says, "Tuna No Crust." That's a Bobby C line right there, Ed.
Let me get. You bought the hat or you made the hat?
I bought the hat. It's a famous line from the movie.
Where'd you buy it?
I don't know. I bought it online at some point. You know, in my little arsenal here at the house, I have an awesome Eclipse replica from the first film. It's one of my toys. It's like a Matchbox toy, but it's a legit, beautiful looking green machine sitting in the driveway. So
nice
stuff, right? I didn't get to ask Steph, again, we teased him a little bit. I was joking with you obviously about trivia and stuff, but I thought it was cool that, you start talking about these great, I'm into sports writers, of course, because started as a sports writer. So these great sports writers that came out of the Bergen Record, some of them, of course, have still been with the paper for many years, whether it's a Bob Clappish covering the Yankees or whatever. But at the time, right before Steph ended up at the Bergen Record, they had a young man then that's now maybe, the top of the line when it comes to NBA reporters. Do you know who that would be? He might drop a bomb on you if you were maybe on Twitter with him. That would be my guess.
Oh no! Top reporter.
Yep. So let's say top NBA insider, millions of followers on
Adam.
Twitter. He was at the Bergen Record right before Steph was there. Woj himself. Yep. Woj was at the Bergen Record, and then Steph followed. So that's a pretty cool guy to follow in footsteps there at the paper. And again, I asked him that question about the New York Daily News because, again, a lot of love for the Daily News. I worked there for a bit, and we had Ian on, and that was someone else that started there, and obviously Frank Isola. I was surprised that
you're basically telling me that the Bergen Record hires everybody.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, Steph.
They hired you.
I've kind of freelanced for a lot of places. That I'm always hustling. That's how it goes. Tuna No Crust, always hustling.
You're one of the best. I've always said that people have underestimated your potential.
Thank you, Edgar. And even though I tease you and stuff, I love the podcast. And tonight I thought you would actually.
Does that mean before we leave, you're coming back next week?
No, I'm not coming back next week. I've been trying to get out of this. I'm hoping that you take Bondy. I think you should take Bondy for next week.
The hashtag has been working. Just let you know. The other day I posted, save Bobby C, please don't leave.
Bobby C, please don't leave.
Bobby, guess how much people looked at it?
10 people. 10 people
No.
looked at it.
652,000 people.
That's not bad. Not too shabby. Yeah. Listen, again, at the top of the show, I thought you'd appreciate at least that I take some of the venom, and instead of directing it all towards you, I try to give a little bit towards Randy. And again, Randy does such a great job, but maybe it is correct at this point to give him a little grief about the fact that,
he hasn't changed the open yet.
The intro is from the very beginning of the show.
I don't know. I hope next week we have a new open, and maybe we need a new background. Maybe we just need everything new.
Maybe I might even change the whole. My curtains probably at this point
almost got the same curtains.
Dated material here because we've used it as some jokes, and I guess at some point too I can't keep
We need a New Jersey up there.
Yeah, making a point of just ragging on you. I'm gonna have to come up with something else for these intros, but I kind of like it. Listen, before we go too, I thought it was interesting. Again, most of the time we talk a lot of NBA. We love basketball. We're hoop junkies here on Step in the Arena. But a couple of interesting facts I think that came up today and even this past week. I think definitely a big point to hit on is the fact that the Jets and the Giants had big time NFL draft. So we talked a little bit about that. But the other point that I thought was interesting tonight when I saw it at the bottom of the screen, the bottom of the ticker there, you see Albert Pujols released by the Angels in the final year of a 10-year contract. A little baseball talk here tonight before we head out. I know Pujols never been the same as he was as the great in St. Louis, but a little surprised that the Angels would just kind of designate him.
He was having a bad year. I mean, the guy made $240 million with the Angels. I mean, he's going to retire a Cardinal. Everyone knows that already. He had a great career. So, I mean, his career ended just pretty much like A-Rod.
Yeah.
41 years old. It was just time.
Phased out there at the very end. That's surprising. I mean, I think it's better when players decide to walk away. I think that's why
he still wants to play though.
Yeah. I'm curious if he will latch on with another team. I mean, they might be a team out there that feels that they could find something in Albert Pujols. Maybe even a team like the Yankees. They seem to find ways to resurrect players,
Nah, we don't want him here.
You don't want Albert Pujols? I would take Pujols maybe to play a little first base if the Yankees are looking for. They need a left-hand hitter is what they need. But lately the Yankees have played really well.
Boyd is coming back. I mean, they lost today, but we'll be back.
Yeah, but I mean, with the way Stanton has played,
Stanton's on fire.
Yeah, Stanton's been in fuego. They've looked much better. Both offensively and defensively, the last 5-6 games, the Yankees have looked a lot better, and maybe juiced up by the Houston Astros. But I think both the Yankees and Mets have played fairly well when all things considered. Maybe you've had some stretches here. I think there's concerns for both teams. Be interesting to see what happens with the Mets with Francisco Lindor. I mean, that's a guy that just can't seem to buy a hit lately. But again, you're talking about the calendar just turned to May. When it comes to baseball, still
he better step it up before he's gonna have a lot of people. He's already got a lot of Met fans pissed off at him, so he needs to step it up.
I think at the end of it, the Yankees and Mets should definitely be in the conversation for the postseason by the time we get there. Talking about the second half of the season.
When football season comes, we got to get some football.
Some football guests. But that's what I was saying. I think most Giant and Jet fans would be pretty pleased with how both teams did in the draft. And I think, this week, of course, again, conversations about the Yankees maybe having a resurgence and the Mets, of course, probably people picking on Lindor. Maybe the biggest story, though, might have been the New York Rangers and everything that transpired there with Panarin, and now the firing of the president and the team GM yesterday. And then, of course, the fact that the Rangers aren't even the best NHL team here in the city. The Islanders beat the Rangers a week ago to clinch a postseason berth. So, maybe we'll actually get, I don't know if we will, but maybe we will get a team like the Islanders deep into the playoffs or the Stanley, fighting for the Stanley Cup, and maybe the Knicks or Nets will actually be in the NBA Finals too. Again, leaning more towards the Nets, but it would be nice to see another potential championship here in the city. It's been a while.
We'll see what happens.
All right, probably a good place for us to wrap up. Definitely appreciate our guest tonight, Stefan Bondy, joining us from the New York Daily News to talk some Knicks. And even though, we make some jokes, I'll see you next Thursday, Ed.
Hey, okay, my guy. All right, see you next Thursday.
And hopefully Randy will give us a new open. For the fans at home.
Later.
Later.